mentioned my grandfather, Bonaparte Hayes, because we know that all of the slaves did not escape. And the question was asked of Harriet Tubman, how many slaves did you free? And she said, I don't know. I would have freed a lot more if they just knew that they were slaves. And of course, we know that this country fought a civil war, and my grandfather, and while I was driving over here, I thought he probably walked or rode a horse through Lancaster or Garrett County to get to Camp Nelson to join the Union Army. And I'm very proud of that fact. And of course, we know the Civil War was fought. There was a Reconstruction. There was 100 so years of Jim Crow. And then, of course, the Civil Rights Movement came to us. And of course, we know that this day that we are celebrating, we celebrate Martin Luther King. This is his day. And I was looking at some of his speeches, and a part of it that stood out to me was a part that in Memphis, the April the 3rd, 1968, I think it was the day before he was killed. He said these words. He said, all I can say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or Russia or in any other totalitarian country, maybe I could understand of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is to be able to protest for the rights. So, we're not going to let any dogs or water holes turn us around. We're not going to let any injunction turn us around. All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. So here we are, 2020. And the parable of the Good Samaritan is still relevant in America because the question was asked, who is my neighbor? And Jesus answered it and gave them a parable of a man laying on the side of a road. And the priest walked by, and the scribes walked by, and that was certainly, there were many things that could be said about that and many reasons why they walked by. Perhaps it was the law. Perhaps it was unconcerned. But the story ends that there was a good Samaritan that stopped, healed his wounds, picked him up, and took care of him. The thing about that is the Samaritan was, in that day that Jesus was telling them, he was not very highly thought of. He was the lowest of the society. He was half Greek and half Jew. So all the Jewish nations looked down upon them. But it was Christ that said that it was the Good Samaritan, or as what we call it. But he asked the question, which one of these three is my neighbor? Yeah. And in 2020, brothers and sisters, I say to you that America is worried about people at the border, and we're worried about all these different things. When we call ourselves a Christian nation and we bow and we hold up a sovereign God and we are saying to him that we can't have everybody else in here because, God, you won't be able to give us enough. Well, I say that's putting limits on God. God is He is the ruler of this world. And remember what Martin Luther King said. Somewhere I read that there was the freedom of press. And we're demonizing it. And I don't believe everything on the press. But I don't need nobody to tell me when somebody's standing on my toe. I already know. So I would say, brothers and sisters, the best thing for us to do is to try to be Christ-like.
That's right.
And that means everyone is my neighbor.
Right.
Because Jesus, when the lawyer came to him and said, which one of these are the greatest commandments? And Jesus said, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, all thy mind, everything that you have, and your neighbor as yourself.